Welcome back to the Off Leash podcast, a podcast for DINKWADs, dual income, no kids with a dog. On this episode, I want to talk about the DINKWAD lifestyle, which is being called the new American dream, particularly for millennials, which is my generation, and also Gen Z. So let's define a few terms here real quickly. A DINK refers to a couple with a double income and no kids, whereas a SINK refers to single income, no kids. And those who have embraced the DINKWAD, SINK, or DINK lifestyles commonly say that they're drawn to a way of life that's free from the responsibilities of parenting and financial stress. My situation is a little bit different in the fact that we did try to have children, and unfortunately, it just didn't work out for us. But now I do find myself in that category of really liking my life, the fact that it is free from those types of responsibilities. And if you look at the latest trends on social media, DINKWAD lifestyle has really taken TikTok and other video sharing platforms by storm. A lot of it comes from couples who plan to never have children, whereas there are some out there like me who did try to have children, it didn't work out, and now they're moving on and finding that life is just as fulfilling without children. And many of the viral video clips that you'll see on these social media platforms will show couples enjoying activities like hiking, travel, going places, shopping with their dogs. And honestly, I think it's really awesome. I think it's really cool that we're increasing the acceptability of not having children while also decreasing the stigma around not having children. I know for myself, I still occasionally get looks from people who don't know me and don't follow me on social media that I am a mid-30s woman without any children by my side. And so I get the question sometimes from well-intentioned yet still ignorant people of, oh, where are your children? Or why don't you have children? So while this may be seen as still a quote unquote light-hearted social media trend, I do think it's indicative of both broader social and economic trends at play, especially in the United States. I'm sure we've all heard, if not seen, the data that's been released by the National Center for Health Statistics back in January of this year, which said that women are having fewer babies and they're having them later in life. And this has been a trend that's been going on for a couple years now. And honestly, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that women in particular, and I know this is true for myself, I wanted a career first. I wanted to be financially stable. I wanted to have a house. I wanted to be married. I wanted to feel like my life was at least headed in a direction that by having a child, I wasn't going to completely derail it and to find myself destitute, possible single mom, not having a way to provide for myself and my child. That just was not something that I ever aspired to or ever wanted. I also wanted to make sure that I got to enjoy life before being tied down with children. And I've always been the type that has seen my animals, particularly my dogs, as my children. So I never really felt this huge maternal pull or maternal instinct towards human children necessarily. And I, for one, am really glad that the American dream that has stereotypically consisted of a happily married couple, two or more children, a dog, a white picket fence, a house in the suburbs, I'm glad that that's not the American dream anymore, or at least not for a lot of us, because there's so much more out there to do and see and experience. And you can even do that with your dogs, which is what we do, that the American dream is really whatever you want it to be now. And I think you have to really consider too the economic times that we're in. Inflation is as high as I've ever seen it in my lifetime. The price of everything is going up. Cost of living is not tracking with inflation, and people are in more debt than they've ever been. To me, it makes perfect sense of why people would not want to add additional financial burdens to their life through having children. From a historic standpoint, I do see how this lifestyle can be offensive to some folks. Traditionally, having kids was not considered optional. I even had a supervisor one time tell me that having children was my civic duty, that I had an obligation to society to have children. And the idea of choosing not to have children was actually inconceivable, pun intended. But Today, having kids has shifted from a necessity to being a commodity. If children are now a commodity, then why are couples still being criticized for choosing not to have them or waiting to have them? I did see a Washington Post article one time that defined dinkwads as wanting responsibility in their lives without the hassle of finding a babysitter or dealing with teenage angst. And I guess in a way that's true. You do still have to find pet sitters. If you talk to any responsible pet owner, that in and of itself can be an enormous responsibility and a hassle. And then also dealing with teenage angst. For me, it wasn't really any certain point of a human's life that was daunting. It was really the entire thing. Honestly, newborns, I didn't want to go through being up all night and having potentially years without a full night's sleep. Like that just sounds terrible to me. And I'm a person that gets up and goes and, I don't spend 12 hours a day sleeping, but that still sounded like something that I definitely did not want to sign up for. I didn't want to spend all of my annual and sick leave potentially going to doctor's appointments. I didn't want to use all of my discretionary income towards a child. I think for a lot of us dinkwads, we don't look at that as selfish. We look at that as self-care, and self-care is never selfish, right? So being a dinkwad, or dinkism, if you like, is not necessarily a path taken to avoid responsibility. But I think it's really a path that allows us to grow our responsibility at a larger scale. So instead of us putting all of our efforts towards changing diapers or carpooling 5 times a week, we can choose to do things like support our community and give back through maybe mentorship, developing someone else's career, or providing assistance to causes that really call to us. Want more dog and dinkwad info sent straight to your inbox every week? Want to be a part of a community of other dinkwads? Sign up for my email newsletter. No spam. That's not even good enough for the dogs. Simply head to my website, www.beautyandtheburners.com, and submit your info at the top of the page and you're in. That's it. Can't wait to see your name pop up on the list and welcome you to the pack. I used to get a lot of slack for the fact of, oh, well, you don't have children. What is your legacy going to be? But putting that responsibility on a child to carry on my legacy, I think is a really bad reason to have a child. I can still leave a legacy by the things that I do in my life, regardless of whether I have human children or not. I can still be remembered as a kind, caring, generous human being without having children. I can write a book. I can start a scholarship fund. I can create a community, which is what I'm trying to do around this lifestyle. My focus is really to give back to something that will benefit future generations, not just to procreate and say that my name or my husband's name is still out there in the world. I mean, that's great. There's nothing against that. But I just wanted to say, from a societal standpoint, having a child is not the only way to leave a legacy. There's also a lot of personal reasons that people may not want to have children. In addition to the financial and the societal and all of that, maybe you had a horrible childhood and you don't want to be responsible for making the same mistakes that you saw your parents make. You don't want to feel the pressure of financial obligations. Maybe you were the product of rape and you don't want to perpetuate that cycle of trauma. Whatever the reason, if you were being selfish, you would have a hard time admitting to those shortcomings. But being a dink should not be viewed as selfish, but actually as selfless. And from my perspective as a dinkwad, I'm completely fine with just my husband and my dogs. They're enough responsibility that I feel I am complete. I also am responsible for things that are outside of my own personal being, and that's enough for me. So I'm curious if you would let me know what your reasons are for being a dinkwad. And there's no right or wrong reason. We just discussed a bunch of different things that could come up. I'm just curious. I love to talk to people about it. I love to find out different reasons for it, the lifestyle, and what you love about it. So let me know, and I will see you in the next episode. I have a quick favor to ask you. If you've ever gotten any value from this podcast and you haven't already, please leave me a rating, and if you're feeling generous, a brief review in the app that you're listening to my voice right now. It only takes a few seconds, but it really goes a long way in helping me to share the stories of dinkwads around the world. It also lets others know that what we're doing here in this community is actually fun and valuable. So once again, if you've ever gotten any value from this show and you haven't already, please just take a moment to leave me a 5-star rating, maybe a brief review, and I will be eternally grateful.